why the world is on notice, emboldened by the military strike in Venezuela and the capture of its leader, Nicolas Maduro. President Trump is now threatening several other countries. He's warning that they could be next.
Geopolitics in the Western Hemisphere is shifting rapidly. From strategic acquisitions in the north to intensifying pressures in the south, the landscape of American national security is being redefined. Today, we're analyzing a series of bold stances on Greenland, Colombia, Cuba, and Mexico. First, we look at Greenland. Long considered a vital point of interest, it is now being framed as a national security necessity. As Arctic competition heats up, the emphasis is clear. Securing this territory is no longer just an option. It's a strategic priority for the United States. Moving to South America and the Caribbean, the rhetoric is sharpening. There is growing concern regarding the leadership in Colombia, specifically regarding the unchecked flow of narcotics into US borders. Meanwhile, observers suggest Cuba may be reaching a breaking point, with its current administration facing unprecedented internal pressure. Finally, the spotlight turns to Mexico. The message is one of urgent accountability. With the rise of cartel-related violence, the stance is firm. Mexico must stabilize its internal security or face significant, direct consequences from the United States. These developments mark a significant hardening of foreign policy. But what do you think? Is this the right approach for regional stability? Before we dive deeper into the analysis, I want to say a huge thank you to all of you. We are incredibly close, just a few names away from hitting our 1,000 subscriber milestone. If you value professional, deep dive reporting, please hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe to join our growing community. Let's get into the details together.
It's all part of Trump's bid for the Western Hemisphere dominance, but just how far is he willing to go to achieve that? Here's what his top White House advisor, Stephen Miller, had to say.
The United States is using its military to secure our interests unapologetically in our hemisphere. We're a superpower, and under President Trump, we are going to conduct ourselves as a superpower. It is absurd that we would allow a nation in our own backyard to become the supplier of resources to our adversaries, but not to us, to hoard weapons from our adversaries, to be able to be positioned as an asset against the United States rather than on behalf of the United States.
Now, just imagine that he was talking about China, and then you see Taiwan is gone.
I just said that.
By that rationale.
How does that make any sense, though? Because China and Iran and Russia, they just lost a strategic partner in the Venezuelan
let me explain. Let me explain why it makes sense. Let me explain why it makes sense. His rationale is we're a superpower and we can do whatever we want in our hemisphere. China says we're a superpower, we can do whatever we want. Why would we let Taiwan sell natural
Wait, you're
resources?
talking about the Iran whose nuclear facility was just neutered and World War III did not erupt?
I'm talking about China, the Monroe Doctrine.
This is the triad.
Hold on.
This is the new axis of evil, right? They all work together. They're all in cahoots.
Hold on, Caroline. Let's just take one at a time, okay? You're Taiwan. And suddenly China says, we're not going to let you sell chips to the United States. Why would we let you sell chips to an adversary? You're in our hemisphere. You're in our backyard. We're a superpower. We're going to just take you off the map. He seems to be laying the predicate there, Stephen Miller, since he's making policy in this White House. He's laying the predicate there for any country that sees itself as a superpower to do exactly what we just did. So how do we stop that?
But again, you're forgetting that those adversaries you just mentioned are already neutered by Trump's very strategic
China is
strikes.
neutered? How?
China's neutered because now one of its partners, Iran, is neutered because they all work together. They all collaborate pretty well.
China is neutered because Iran is neutered.
Do you think the message of this operation is that China will be empowered to attack Taiwan?
I'm just asking you to take what he said to the logical conclusion.
The logical conclusion, according to President Trump, is that he thinks we're in a new Monroe Doctrine where we control Western Hemisphere, China gets Asia, Russia gets Europe, and we split the world into three parts. Now, that makes no sense because in the 21st century, oceans are highways, not borders. But it's also a bastardization of what James Monroe must be turning in his grave right now, because the whole Monroe Doctrine was about anti-intervention. It was about anti-colonialism. It was about Latin American countries being independent and sovereign.
How is this colonialism or imperialism? We don't exercise any sovereignty over Venezuela. He said we're running the place and we're going to take their oil. That's the definition of it. He's exercising leverage over Maduro's deputy, which is a good thing because, as you pointed out rightfully, she has a lot of skeletons in her closet and she's very much part of the
point
regime.
Is, when China goes to the third world, they come with economic offerings and benefits and infrastructure, and we say, if you don't give us everything you got, we're going to kill you, okay? Which of those do you think is going to work over the long term?
Can we just back up?
Do you know the Colombian president's poll numbers have gone way up in the last week?
Can we back up just a little bit?
He's the most popular leader now because of what Trump did. He's actually bolstering his enemies and driving them into our enemies' arms.
Let's back up just slightly because you're right. But also one of the
That's the opposite of what he wanted to do.
But that's also one of the problems with this foreign policy that dates back. Nothing happens in a vacuum. And when we go back and we look at Elon Musk, for example, and we look at USAID, one of the problems that many people had when we talked about foreign policy was the fact that we actually had some soft power, right? We would go into these countries. We would do things like develop these programs, things that China is doing in this hemisphere that they still will be doing, things that China's doing in Africa, which we've advocated. We pulled ourselves out. So where is China growing their influence? Now, is China weaker because they lose 10% of their oil reserves? Yes. What does that have to do with the debt that our debt that China holds? Not much of anything. Is China still a superpower? Hell yeah. Will they flex their muscle against Taiwan? You bet against that if you want to. But I think we also have to look at a foreign policy that's run by tweet. We have a foreign policy that is disheveled. You all don't even have talking points about what the objectives were for kidnapping Nicolas Maduro. And the last part about it is, to your point, if Democrats have to hammer this, and stop writing these long ass tweets and essays. He is choosing Venezuelans over Americans. He's choosing Caracas over the needs of these people, of our soybean farmers. We are actually talking about Greenland instead of inflation. Right. We're talking about invading other countries.
On Saturday, he said we're going to spend billions of dollars rebuilding their infrastructure, right? This is a man who campaigned largely as an isolationist, who campaigned about pulling back and ending conflict. And in the first year of his administration, we've bombed Iran, Yemen. Now we've gone after Venezuela, as well as many others. I mean, this man doesn't see a problem that he doesn't think he can bomb his way out of or use the military to do. And frankly, I'm sorry, as a three-time combat veteran in Iraq and Afghanistan, I bristle when a five-time draft dodger bangs the war drums in Washington, D.C., because when elites bang the war drums in Washington, D.C., what happens is some young kid in a rural town in middle America, in places where I grew up, has to pick up a rifle, jump into a tank, jump into a helicopter, and do the tough thing. It's never Donald Trump. It's never people like Stephen Miller. They never have to do this the tough stuff. It's people like me and the people that I grew up with that have to do it. And America, again, is over all of this, right? They want peace. They want restraint. They want people to be smart about the use of power. Yes, they want toughness, but they want smart toughness.
Let me play a little bit more from Stephen Miller. This is where he decries that after World War II, we've been abiding by, the rules that we created after that war. Listen.
For years, we sent our soldiers to die in deserts in the Middle East to try to build them parliaments, to try to build them democracies, to try to give them more oil, to try to give them more resources. The future of the free world, Jake, depends on America being able to assert ourselves and our interests without apology. This whole period that happened after World War II, where the West began apologizing and groveling and begging and engaging in these vast reparation schemes.
For 8 decades, the post-war world order has been the bedrock of Western civilization. It's a system designed to prevent invasions, promote trade, and cement the United States as the world's sole superpower. On paper, America is winning. We lead the world in GDP, military might, and innovation. But a growing chorus of voices is asking a dangerous question. Who is this system actually serving? Proponents of the current system point to the data. They argue that the US remains the ultimate beneficiary of the world it created. We are the guarantors of global peace and the world's largest economy. By any objective metric, from market dominance to geopolitical influence, America hasn't just participated in the global order, we've dominated it. However, critics argue that these objective metrics hide a darker reality. They suggest that while the American elite has flourished under globalization, the working class has been fleeced. The argument isn't about GDP, it's about the human cost. They point to the rise of China, a competitor built on the back of Western-led trade rules, mass migration, challenging domestic stability and wages, the fentanyl crisis, a symptom of what many call deaths of despair in abandoned industrial towns. The debate essentially boils down to this. Is a 60% increase in GDP a victory if the social fabric of the country is tearing? One side sees the US as a global success story that must be preserved. The other sees a country being hollowed out by its own policies, arguing that superpower status means very little to a parent who has lost a child to the drug epidemic. We are witnessing a shift in the American psyche, a move away from globalism and toward a fierce domestic protectionism. The question remains, can we fix the working class without destroying the global stability that made America a superpower in the first place?
Batya,
yes.
Listen, there is income inequality in the world. There are drug overdoses and deaths in this country that are way out of control. But we're talking about the big picture of where we were at the end of World War II and where we are today. And the United States has guaranteed peace, prosperity, and security around the world for that entire period of time. And we have done it and been the primary beneficiary, not China, but us.
I want to answer.
The question I'm asking you and Stephen Miller is, what time period exactly are we going back to? Are we talking about colonialism?
Okay.
Do we want colonies? Or we want to invade Greenland? We want to steal it from a NATO ally? We want to dissolve NATO? What are we doing?
All right. So starting in 1971, working class wages stagnated. So working class people are making around the same amount of.
You think that's because
I want to answer your very good question.
But you think that's because after World War II, we told countries to stop invading each other?
Starting in 1965, we implemented a policy of mass migration to where the percentage of foreign-born Americans right now is higher than it's ever been in American history. That led to the disinheritance of the American working class that is very tied to our foreign policy.
So your code word, a policy of mass migration, is really what you're talking about. Is that we stopped saying that only Europeans
offshored
could
manufacturing
come to the United States.
to China.
I'm just trying to decode for the Americans.
We offshored manufacturing to China.
I'm not into the euphemisms here. If you're talking about 1965 and mass migration, what you're talking about is a policy that said that you don't have to be from Europe to come to the United States. You can be a talented person, a person with potential from anywhere in the world.
All the immigration restrictions before that were on Europeans, like Jews who they didn't let in.
Can we go back to the
So that's not right. It's not about race at all. It's not about Europe. It is about the difference between being an American and not being an American. And we sold that difference out through that post-war world order. And that is why people vote for Donald Trump.
The question is wrong. The question is wrong. The question is wrong. And the reason the question is wrong, respectfully for the past conversation, is because people at this table are attempting to articulate that somehow the working class in America has had a rough go at it, right? That's your argument, the working class. My question to you is, how does a presence of America in Honduras, in Colombia, in Cuba, or in Greenland help working class Americans.
Can the removal of a single dictator solve a domestic crisis thousands of miles away? A heated debate is erupting over the US strategy in Venezuela following the abduction of Nicolas Maduro. Is this a masterstroke of leverage or a superficial fix for a deep-rooted regime? The core of the argument rests on a controversial premise: stabilization over total revolution. Proponents argue that by holding leverage over Maduro's deputy, the US can force market reforms and end the communist stranglehold on the region. The goal isn't just political, it's economic. If the Venezuelan economy stabilizes, the push factor of poverty-driven migration begins to vanish. But critics aren't buying it. They argue the Maduro regime isn't just about one man. It's a system built on oppression and narco-terrorism. Leaving a deputy in power may offer the illusion of stability, but does it actually change the DNA of a dictatorship? More importantly, how does leveraging a communist regime in South America help a struggling family in Detroit, Michigan? This is where the geopolitical meets the local. The debate highlights a direct link between foreign policy and the American middle class. With rising grocery prices, soaring insurance rates, and failing schools, the argument is that unfettered migration places an unsustainable strain on US social services. By stabilizing Venezuela at the source, the US aims to reduce the downward pressure on American blue-collar jobs and public resources. As the Pentagon faces internal backlash for its handling of these operations, the question remains: is this foreign policy for the sake of democracy or for the sake of the American taxpayer? It's a complex situation with no easy answers. I want to hear from you. Does stabilizing a regime through leverage actually work, or are we just delaying the inevitable? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more. I'm Insights Brief, and I'll see you in the next one.